In the previous video, we looked at some of the Angular structural directives used to loop over a dataset and generate the code to display a list of data. Now let's look at editing a list. This will include the following actions: adding an item, editing an item, and deleting an item. Let's look at each of these in turn. In a typical user interface, adding an item to a list might be achieved by clicking on a button or icon. A plus sign would signify adding something. The request to add an item to the list could just insert a new item with some default information, or the user may be asked to enter information first before having it added to the list. Here we can see a component's HTML template that includes a button with a click event. Below this is an ion list that will iterate over a list of contacts from the contacts array, and it will be using an ng-for structural directive to do this. Here is the components class file where we can see the initialization of the contacts array with some default data. We can also see the add contacts click event function that will request a user's name and add that name to the end of the contacts array using the push method of an array. The contacts array is bound via the ng-for loop of the ion item element. As the contacts array changes, the list will update with the new names. In summary, to add an item to a list, add a button to add a new item, prompt the user for information, use a modal and not a prompt, as you will have more scope over the number of item properties that can be added at once. Add the new information to the array, and the template will automatically update as the ng-for is bound to the array. Editing a list requires the ability to display the current information to the user before they can change it. When we edit an item, we need to be able to change the value of an existing item in the array. When we need to know the item's indexed position in the array, we can use the index property from the ng-for loop to get this value and pass it to our edit contacts click event function. The edit contacts function will now have a reference to the index position in the contacts array of the item that was selected. The index that is passed into the edit contact function is used to find the value in the array and to modify its value. Once again, a modal is a more appropriate UI element to ask the user for information. So in summary, to edit a list, you need to add an event to individual list items, pass an index of list item, look up existing value and display to the user, allow the user to edit the existing value, and to overwrite the existing value with a new value entered by the user into the corresponding index in the array. Apart from the standard click, double-click style events, mobile provides us with a swiping gesture. UI elements have used this swiping gesture as a way to bring functionality into and out of view. When we want to delete an item from a list, we are able to make use of a sliding list item, which allows us to swipe a couple of buttons on and off the screen from either the left or right of the screen. Each ion item sliding wraps an ion item and also adds in the ion item options tag to house the button functionality. Typically, a button or two can be added that gives us edit and delete functionality for an individual list item as we are running an action on an item that already exists. It is good practice to check with the user before deleting anything. You do not have to go the full Microsoft Clippy mad. Just a single yes/no confirmation is fine. To delete items from an array, we have a few methods available. We have a pop method on an array, and that allows us to remove an item from the end of the list. We also have an unshift method, which allows us to remove an item from the front of the list. JavaScript does have an array method called splice. Splice can be used to add and delete items from any location in the array. For deleting, the first parameter defines the index to start the deletion, and the second parameter defines how many items are to be deleted after the starting position. In summary, to delete an item from a list, you would provide a delete button, possibly through a sliding list item, pass an index of the item to delete, ask the user before deleting, delete from the array using splice, and the list will automatically update itself. The examples so far use an array of strings. More commonly, you will need an array of objects. For example, a contact will have a first name, last name, email address, etc. The previous examples will work essentially the same for objects. However, you will need to display a modal to allow the user to enter multiple fields and use object dot notation to reference each property that you have to display.